move forward and know that no matter what the external circumstance, we're in this for all kids. So, want to start to jump into the material. So, I have a question. How many of you listening would like to experience more students learning more often? Now, I can't see your smiling face as I usually would, but I'm assuming that everybody's raising your hand. Just humor me and raise your hand so at least I can pretend to see you virtually. We all want to. I've never met a teacher ever who did not want students to do better. So, everybody who is viewing this presentation, I am under the assumption we all want our young people to grow, develop, and to become better and better intellectually, socially, morally. We all want it. But the only thing that's really missing, the only controversy would be how to do it. So we all want the same thing. The question we'd have to ponder is how do we get there? And that's why you've come to this conference. Now he's saying to get through this, PLC is not a luxury. PLC is an absolute emergency necessity. Let's go back for a minute. If you look at these recommendations and you know anything about PLC, Hattie's basically saying during disruptive schooling, we have to be on PLC on steroids. Cut down non-essentials. Really emphasize gathering feedback and target student support. So this is not the time, dear educators, to abandon PLC. This is the time to increase it. So you answered my question. Do you want kids to learn more at a deeper level more often? And I'm assuming, because I know you, that you said yes. And I said what was missing was how to do it. You've heard of the last couple of days, wonderful speakers addressed you and tried to convince you that the best way to do that is a concept called professional learning communities at work. In fact, I tried to display to you just now that this method is even more essential right now than it even was before the pandemic. So let's get on the same page about what we mean by PLC. In the book that you were all gifted with your registration, Learning by Doing, 3rd edition, the authors of this watershed work wrote that what is a PLC? It's an ongoing process in which educators work together collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research with the goal of achieving better learning results for the students in which they serve. The PLCs operate under an assumption. That assumption is the key to improve learning for students is continuous job-embedded learning for educators. So it's an ongoing process where we commit to the common goal of student learning. We engage in this process in recurring cycles, and the growth of the educator becomes the catalyst to the growth of the student. So in this book, these authors identify the 6 essential elements of a real PLC. And I'd like to review them for you so you can do a little assessment, formative assessment of yourself. So you can answer the question, are we on the road to more effectiveness or aren't we? They've made the targets, the essential elements, absolutely crystal clear. The first stage or step of being a real PLC is that educators agree to work together collaboratively rather than in isolation, and they're responsible collectively for student learning, and they clarify the commitments that they're going to make to each other, to the work, and to the students. Build consensus about our direction. How you doing on this first element? Number 2, now that we've made a professional and moral commitment to increasing student learning, we're going to do it together, the fundamental structure of the school becomes the collaborative team, in which members work together interdependently to achieve common objectives for which they are all mutually accountable. So if our goal is learning for all kids, it's everybody in your school, on a meaningful team where there's peer pressure and mutual accountability with student learning as its objective. If not, you got some work to do. Element 3. What's the first job of a team if learning is their focus? To establish what's called a guaranteed and viable curriculum, unit by unit, so that students have access to the same knowledge and skills regardless of their teachers to whom they're assigned. So if we're going to increase learning, we have to first define what we mean by learning. What are the success criteria that all kids will be held accountable for? Element number 4. That team develops common formative assessments that are given regularly in order to gather evidence on student learning so that the team can learn from one another and to understand which students need support and which students require extra assistance. Element 5, the school has created a system of interventions and extensions that ensure students who struggle receive additional time and support, and that support that's directive, timely, diagnostic, and systemic, and that students who show proficiency get an extension to enhance their learning. And then finally, the last real element, that the team uses evidence of student learning to inform and improve their collective practice for all of its members. We don't operate off of assumptions or beliefs. We operate off of evidence of the impact of our practice. Seems simple enough, right? If it's not that simple, I'll make it even simpler. We've taken all of those very key components, and the authors have made this process what Rick DeFore called elegantly simple. Put people on teams. Those teams work in recurring cycles on 4 critical questions that they answer together. Question number 1, what do we want students to know and be able to do? Guaranteed and viable curriculum. Question 2, how do we know if students have learned? Formative evaluation. Question 3, how do we respond when students don't learn? Intervention. Question 4, how do we respond when students have learned or shown proficiency? Extension. Seems simple enough, right?